Mark, really, really pleased to be speaking to you today. We've got 2 weeks now to Cenex Expo 2024. We're looking forward to the event and for the opportunity to talk about key themes for connected automated mobility in the UK. And you'll be part of the official opening. So really interested to hear what you see as the key opportunity areas for the UK in the area of CAM.
Thanks, Robert. Yeah, and as always, the Cenex Expo is one of our major calendar events for the Zenzic team every year. So yeah, delighted to be coming along again this year, having a good presence. We'll be there on the government pavilion stand and supporting a lot of our partner network in the CAM hall as well. It's a really exciting year. I think 2024, if I cast my mind back to when I started at Zenzic, we set up this roadmap out to 2030, and we always said middle of this decade is a really pivotal point, and I think nothing has really seemed to change our minds in that. So when we're looking at the future and what we're going to be doing at the Cenex Expo this year, it's really about trying to lay out this great vision for the future and look at where the opportunities are in all sorts of areas for connected and automated mobility. This year we're going to be really leaning on a piece of work that we published earlier in the year around our opportunities to scale. We really believe that here in the UK that we are right on the cusp of being able to take a lot of our amazing SMEs and startup companies, a lot of this emerging technology, and really sort of take it out of that R&D phase and start moving it towards deployment and really making what I would call a real thing happen. We want to see this technology being deployed on our roads and in our industries, which is really making an impact. So yeah, we're really looking forward to the expo this year. We think a lot of our partners have got some great things to show, and our job is we'll be there championing the UK and trying to convince everybody that this is the place to come when we talk about connected and automated mobility.
Superb. We will have both a mixture of UK and international visitors. What do you think particularly we'll be wanting to draw the UK international attendees toward? What key features of the event and what kind of conversations do we want to be having with international visitors?
Yeah, the international angle is really important. I think the more that we've been looking at this over this last year, the more convinced we are that UK companies have a real strategic role to play in the global supply chain of CAM. I think we recognise that we've got some great capabilities and great components of the supply chain here in the UK. And what we really want to do is to reach out to some of those international markets and the companies which are pulling together vehicles, your tier one suppliers, your OEMs, your big deployers of vehicle fleets, and really just sort of lift the veil and peek under the covers of what the UK is doing here, and really unveil to the world some of the great capabilities that we have. So we're really looking forward to getting some conversations going with kind of the international supply chain, the global supply chain, and showcasing some of the great things that are happening in the UK. And it's really interesting. We might naturally go to thinking about the technology areas, and we've got areas around cybersecurity. We've got some really world-class companies in the kind of software stack of self-driving vehicles. But increasingly, what we're seeing is actually the knowledge that the UK has in how to deploy. We think about the insurance market. The global insurance market is anchored here in the UK with the financial sector. There's a great wealth of experience there. And what's really interesting is that what we're seeing is a lot of the conversations that we have with governments around the world and with big deployers of this technology around the world is the UK's view on how are we going to deploy, how are we going to test it, how are we going to make sure it's safe. And obviously, the big news coming earlier this year with the Automated Vehicles Act coming through Parliament and getting laid there, and now a formal part of legislation. That's taken us a massive step forward. So I expect there'll be a lot of conversation, a lot of interest around what does that really mean, how does it work, and what we want to do is use that as just yet another example of why people should come to the UK. Not to just develop their technology, but to learn how to deploy, and in fact, even deploy here as their kind of their second deployment beyond their home location.
Okay, so with the connected automated mobility, some of the early attention, maybe the early attention grabbing area was in the kind of so-called robo taxis, the for inner city travel. But we've got in the UK some really interesting projects going on around broader passenger transport. And also on the logistics side. So, what from where you sit, Mark, where are you seeing those early commercial opportunities lying, and what kind of projects are you seeing in the UK that are real pathfinders for these early market opportunities?
Yeah, really good question, and you're absolutely right. If we go back to the height of the CAM bubble, and on the hype curve, right at the top there, back probably 8 or 9 years ago, robo taxis was all the rage, and I understand, completely understand why. If you look at the total addressable market, the taxi market globally is absolutely huge, and it's the big prize, one of the big prizes to be sought. Unfortunately, or maybe not coincidentally, it's one of the biggest challenges to overcome, both from a technical perspective and the regulatory and safety perspective as well. So what we've started to uncover as over the last sort of 3 or 4 years is actually what we believe is the way that this technology will be deployed is in areas that are not in that kind of personal passenger mobility space. So the SMMT produced the CAM exploitation opportunities report, economic opportunity report last year, and that highlighted actually that there are some different markets that we see CAM coming to earlier. So we really believe, probably in two very broad buckets, that industrial applications in the movement of goods, so not people but goods, so whether that is first mile industrial logistics, whether it's middle mile freight, we see that actually that B2B movement of goods is going to be a really early opportunity. The freight sector in the UK is a huge opportunity. There's over 15,000 freight companies operating, and members of our partner organisation Logistics UK, and the movement of that goods. If we can make that more efficient, if we can make it safer, quicker, more convenient, what that does is has a huge economic impact as we reduce the cost of transporting goods around the UK. We also recognise that typically those vehicles will travel on similar routes. So technically, and from a technological perspective, it's an easier domain to deploy the vehicles into. So we see that early industrial application of movement of goods as one of the opportunities. Alongside that, actually, you can start to look at things around the construction areas. We can think about things in agriculture and mining and some of those kind of off-road areas. So we think that's one of the big places that we're going to see CAM come through sooner rather than later, because it's very much a business-to-business business model, and the way that you might construct that is much simpler, and we're seeing technology already coming there. The second big bucket of deployments that we really believe is strategically important, not just for the UK but actually globally, is public passenger transport. So if we think about the UK transport market at the moment, buses typically are one of the mainstays of public transport around. Running a bus service is very costly. Not many bus services turn a profit, and many of them are heavily subsidised. So we believe, again, deploying the CAM technology in the right areas and in the right services, you can unlock a much more sustainable public transport market. And we know recently here in the UK from the Chancellor's speech as the new government came in, that the buses and the bus network and sustainable public transport is a huge policy area. So we think actually, it is still moving people and goods, industrial sectors in those more controlled environments, but actually the mass transit of people in cities and rural areas is a big opportunity. And we've got some great examples of that happening here in the UK already. CCAV, so the Centre for Connecting Autonomous Vehicles, funded some projects, which we spoke about at last year's Expo. They're coming to the tail end of those projects, and they're really getting to the pointy end of deploying some of these services. And if we look at the kind of examples of those projects, there's two projects which are deploying passenger transport services around Cambridge and also around Sunderland, which are coming to integrate connected automated mobility into the wider public transit network. And then you also see, again, up in Sunderland, seems to be a real hotbed of activity up there around first mile logistics deployment. So the projects they're deploying the movement of goods from local suppliers into a production line and seeing that come through. So not only do we believe that those are the two big buckets, we're already seeing projects that are starting to deploy, and we're excited to share a bit more this year about what those projects are up to.
Superb. I know we have the CCAV deployment projects from the Solihull and Oxford are interested coming along to present. Sorry, Solihull and Cambridge. Cambridge are looking to present, and we also have sessions on automated logistics and passenger transport. So, I guess with an event like Cenex Expo, then the projects are coming to present. What type of audience should be coming along to these? Is it with this, I guess, technology developers, but also, I guess, the organizations that will then look to deploy themselves commercially?
Absolutely, and at the risk of giving you the obvious answer that everybody should come, and of course they should. I really actually do believe that these deployment projects are really quite unique because they're very holistic. Because to put a vehicle on the road to deliver a real world transport service, it encompasses a very broad supply chain. If we take the view from one of our earlier reports of our UK CAM supply chain, it takes everything from insurers to vehicle maintenance engineers to deep cyber experts and everything in between to pull together that service. So coming along to hear about what these deployment projects have been doing, I think is of interest for anyone who's involved in the CAM sector. So those in the technology side, as you say, who want to sort of come and see and feel what the technology, the latest state of the art is. Those who maybe run transport services and want to understand what's the opportunity, is there a business model in it for me, how would it work in practice, and those who provide all of the ancillary and support services into that. So I think they're really interesting if you want to, and maybe even if you're a cynic and a skeptic, is this a real thing? Are we talking Jetsons flying cars? Well, I think come along and listen to these projects, because these are real projects which are happening on the ground today, and to really uncover lots of the nitty-gritty and the interesting things which come out from doing it real for the first time. I'm really excited to hear an update from those projects.
Superb. No, that's great. And Mark, then the primary legislation. So we've had the AV bill passed. So, and that I know has been effectively progressed through a huge amount of work from the Law Commission, from CCAV, and a huge amount of stakeholder engagement. Where do you see that puts us now? And what do you think the next steps are in terms of being able to have a kind of commercial market where organizations know what is required to deploy and compress on and get that technology into the market faster, quicker?
Yeah, excellent. And as you say, I mean, the AV Act coming into law is an absolutely critical and foundational part of what we do next. So, as I mentioned before, in our CAM 2030 roadmap, now 2035 roadmap, we always said by 2025 we needed this new legislation in place so that we could unlock the commercial market going forwards. Because the use of vehicles on the road is a regulated activity, there's only so much you can do without the legislation which allows you to put a fully self-driving vehicle on the road. So having that in place now actually is the biggest thing that we could have done to unlock the economic and commercial opportunity here in the UK. So this is a great first step, and I think as you indicated, we can't rest on our laurels. We can't stop there. And indeed, I know that government is continuing to work really hard on the secondary legislation, because now that we are legally allowed to do it, the question is, how can we do it and how can we ensure that it's safe? So the next stage now really is to understand, both from a government perspective, what does the secondary legislation need to look like? What do we want it to say? How are we going to start architecting the rules of how you might get that self-driving vehicle on the road? And then from an industry perspective, it's about clarity on what the expectations are on them, and how can industry itself prove that it is safe as a careful and competent driver, which is what the AV Act outlines. So there's a huge amount of work to do next. But what's really exciting is that I think it doesn't just sit with any one organisation, or it doesn't just sit with government, it doesn't just sit with industry. Both parties, and in fact everybody involved in the CAM space, needs to collaboratively work together, and that's one of the big calls. And you'll know that at Zenzic, at our beating core is collaboration, and our role, and something we're really passionate about, is ensuring that we go forwards with that. So it's really exciting that the Act is out there. There's a lot of work to be done on that secondary legislation, which is, we sort of describe the how do I get a vehicle on the road. But I think, if we look globally, not many territories have put in place primary legislation. Certainly we're among the first in Europe. Germany has had it for a short while. But I think the pace at which we're working, and the passion to get that secondary legislation, once that is in, we have no excuses. As industry, we can really drive forwards and start to develop those commercial models to deploying them. So yeah, hugely exciting time to be in the CAM space.
Yeah, well, marvelous. So we talk about connected automated mobility. So we have the connectivity element and we have the automation. I'm very interested in what more we need to do on connectivity, and maybe the infrastructure side of that, and the role of data in enabling automated vehicles to operate. So I'm assuming that it's not going to be a question of full automation, but maybe that is in some cases, but others I'm expecting that connectivity to be a key enabler. So I'm very interested in what your roadmap is saying about this, and what you see as the sort of opportunity areas to draw in more on the telecom side, and the types of infrastructure that will facilitate maybe connected corridors and the like, that could facilitate early market adoption.
Yeah, and I think sometimes we can get so enthralled by the automation, the A in CAM, that we forget that the C comes first in CAM. So you're right. When we look at the future of transport, we look at the future of mobility. I think connectivity is already here, and it's already part of how we access our transport system. It is part of how we manage our fleets of vehicles. It is a core part of how public infrastructure is delivered, and none of that will change. I think what's really interesting is this interplay between the connectivity and the automation. And I did my first connected vehicle project, show my age now, possibly 20 years ago, to automatically book freight parking in London in my previous role. Have we completely changed the world by now in the connectivity space? I suspect maybe not what my young, fresh-faced graduate ambitions and aspirations were. We're not quite there, because it's a really tricky problem. It's a really difficult challenge, and in part because it requires us all to work together. The data that I hold as a user of a transport system, who accesses that, where does it go, which infrastructure do you use to get there, who's going to use it for what? There are a lot of really interesting questions around there. And in fact, with our roadmap, we laid out very clearly that there's a whole theme around the connectivity and the infrastructure. And in fact, just in this year, we're focusing on that kind of scaling the CAM infrastructure. And a colleague of mine, Millie, will be talking on the second day in the morning at Cenex Expo around how do we unlock tomorrow's mobility through that infrastructure. So I'll tease that, and you should definitely come along and have a listen to that. But in essence, I think the connectivity is a critical part of it. I think we can certainly deliver elements of automation without needing the connectivity. But actually, you can't deliver a transport network or a mobility ecosystem without the connectivity. So talking more about the data and more about the information that we need to share to deliver better journeys is where the conversation needs to be. From that will follow all the technical conversations about protocols and infrastructure and all of those areas which make it a reality. But first, I think we really need to be clear. What information, what data do we need, and how's that going to improve journeys? And that, I think, again, is the exciting conversation that I'm fully expected to have many times across those 2 days in a few weeks' time.
So, Mark, you talk about collaboration. and as you say, the multi-stakeholder nature of the space in which we're operating. So I guess I'm very interested in, for example, your important role in influencing. So and the bodies and organisations and groupings that you can influence through. So I guess I'd be interested to know the work you're doing with the Automotive Town Council.
Yeah, absolutely, and we're in a very privileged position as Zenzic. We are part government, part industry. We sort of sit with a foot in both camps, and that leads us to a real privileged and an insightful position. So one of those things, as you say, is the Automotive Council of the UK. So we sit on the CAM working group of the Automotive Council. Our CEO sits on the main council, and I'm sort of part of the leadership team of that CAM working group. So we're deeply involved with the Automotive Council, and clearly the UK has a long heritage in the automotive sector, and we recognise that they are one of the big stakeholders in the future of CAM. One of the things that we've been working really hard with is, and we'll have to say that the leadership team of that CAM working group through David Skip and Jeff Davies is instrumental in this, but is trying to bring in different sectors that maybe you might expect to see in an automotive council kind of working group. So it's not just those who are building the vehicles or the components and the various kind of tier layers in there, but we have participants from local authorities, from insurance companies, and from all sorts of walks of life that are contributing into CAM, because we truly believe, and it's how we architect our view on the supply chain, it's how we think about our roadmap, it's how we believe CAM needs to be, is that all those sectors need to come together. So we work very closely with the Automotive Council. We seek to sort of draw in new members to bring new lifeblood and new ideas into that. So we work with them around some of their strategies, and we input into those, and the conversations then are had at a ministerial level with government are informed by the voice that we can bring from industry into that group, but also with our colleagues and partners in the Automotive Council.
Fantastic. So, Mark, you've worked at Zenzic. You've worked for many years now in supporting SMEs, supporting new entrants into the sector, and helping them grow and develop. So, I'm very interested to hear more about the work that you do with smaller organisations, startups, and how you help them scale.
Yeah, absolutely. So, at our very core, we believe that CAM itself is built on the foundation of some amazing startups and SME organisations here in the UK. So we have been running for around about 5 years now our CAM Scale Up programme, which is a programme specifically designed to support SMEs in this space take their products and their services through a structured testing regime to accelerate the development of that project. Because I think anybody who's ever worked for a startup or a small company knows is that the time to market, the pace at which you need to move to get towards the point you can have revenue coming in and keep the company going is critical. So the CAM Scale Up program has been running for 5 years. In fact, we will be announcing the latest cohort 5 at the event on the first day of my keynote speech. So if you want to know who the latest and greatest shining stars, rising stars are in the CAM sector, do come along to that. But we'll be announcing them and the people that we're working with, and we do that in partnership with CAM Testbed UK. So one of the foundational pillars of CAM in the UK is our ability to test products, ensure their safety and their robustness ready to get to market. So CAM Testbed UK are a great supporter of the CAM Scale Up programme. So we work very closely with the SME community. We have a big alumni network of SMEs who've been through the programme, and some really great and interesting stories coming out of there of kind of new ventures forming as SMEs work together, acquisitions of and funds raising successes coming out off the back of that programme. And we believe actually that the SMEs here in the UK have a critical role to play, not just in that innovation, but actually the disruption and pushing forwards the sector. So we're really excited to share who that latest cohort will be. And we've got other programs looking at investor readiness and how do we support those organisations, not just with their technology, but how do we make them more investable? How do we support them and provide mentoring and leadership insights to them to help them grow as businesses as well as their technology.
But Mark, we've done a huge amount of development in the UK, really building up a set of an exciting supply chain of innovative companies, and also kind of, I think, a very strong design, engineering, and test community. I guess from the software simulation through to, as you mentioned, the test beds. So I'm interested to what role you see in this next phase for the physical test bed for the test bed partners.
Yeah, great question. I think the first answer to that is that the testing that we need to put in place needs to be both physical and virtual. So when we talk about testing, ensuring safety, and ensuring that we can meet and demonstrate that we are going to achieve this, this new secondary legislation that's incoming, we have to take a holistic view on that. So if we look at CAM Testbed UK, there are a number of physical test beds there with all sorts of environments, from urban to rural to high speed tracks and handling surfaces and all sorts of things there. But all of them have elements of virtual testing capability and simulation systems which allow you to test in a virtual environment. So as we shift our focus or continue to look ahead to the deployment of these services into real transport areas of need as our goal, it will become increasingly important that those services go through the ringer of testing and validation. So in fact, I see that the test beds and our ability to provide that robust safety case for these services will become of increasing importance. I think what we have seen over the last handful of years is we're in the early TRL levels, that early innovation stage where we're testing the concepts and we're testing the lower level functional performance of various bits of technology. Now we need to start bringing it together, and you need to do that in environments which are representative of where you're going to go. So I think lots of great work with a number of our CAM Testbed UK partners, not just around the physical test beds and the facilities they provide, but also the virtual environments, the scenarios, all of the different things you need to take into account to ensure that you can make a robust case that someone's going to sign off that you are careful and competent as a self-driving vehicle. So for me, that continues to be a foundation of what we need to deliver here in the UK for CAM, so that we can get those deployments which are going to transform our transport network.
So where do you see the next set of opportunities, beyond 2024? What do you see as the critical next enablers to support both supply chain development and the market development that then pulls through supply chain supply of products and services?
Yeah. So what next? Where do we go? So I think what we have discovered is that, and I sort of go back to what I said before, that the UK has a role to play in the global supply chain, but there are specific strategic areas of importance and criticality, that an opportunity that we have here in the UK. So I think as we look next and we look at what the opportunities are, I think we need to be quite focused here in the UK around what the opportunities are for the supply chain, and that's not just picking winners or looking at particular types of technology, but where can we have a role to play in the global supply chain? And in fact, every year we run a supply chain opportunity survey, which goes out and talks to a few hundred of the companies here in the UK to understand, where are they at in their growth journey? What are they supplying into the UK? What does their international market look like? Which really gives us a great handle on what's happening in the UK, where the opportunities are, maybe where the gaps are, and the things that we could step into. And again, actually at the Cenex Expo, we'll be launching the next iteration of that survey. So we'll be calling it the great and good of the CAM sector to come and contribute into that. That will give us the absolute latest understanding of where those opportunities are. But right now, we definitely see them in some of the core spaces around the software stack. We've got some great capability here in the UK. We look at the insurance sector as a real opportunity. I think there's some hard yards to be done there. But actually, if you look, we are the hub of the insurance sector globally. there's a huge opportunity to step forward into this self-driving market and really be the preeminent supplier of insurance products in the world. And there's a handful of other of those areas that we are looking at. Again, all around these kind of use cases of industrial logistics and middle mile freight management and the public transport. And I think by keeping ourselves focused on those and being world class in some of those particular areas, what that will do is will draw the eyes to the UK. And again, that brings in that international conversation that we can look at how the UK can be a powerhouse of the global CAM market.
Is one of the areas for automotive has been very traditionally the idea of global standards, so that what it is you design for, and then what you design for being able to deploy across global markets. So do you see a move there for global kind of certification standards, and do you see the UK as well placed to assist in helping shape and form these?
Yeah, I mean, the UK, as you say, has a long heritage in those global standards, both in the automotive sector and in the transport sector. If you look at a lot of the transport safety regulations have grown out of BSI here in the UK. We continue to play a very strong and core role in a lot of the European standard groups. The likes of Siddhartha at WMG, supports a lot of those international standards group through BSI and directly through the Department for Transport International Vehicle Standards team. We're participating in all of the right working groups which are setting those global regulations. I think one of the really interesting opportunities that we have that speaks to kind of the pace that we need for this secondary legislation is that if we can be among the first to sort of really get to the nitty gritty of, well, what does that registration look like? We can be very influential, because we could take one of two opportunities. We could sit back and wait for the global standards to kind of emerge and we can adopt them, or we can forge ahead and we can be sort of a North Star for some of these things and start to work through that and then feed that into the international vehicle standards areas. So I would be very surprised if we don't continue to hold that kind of international standards and kind of informing the way that the global market works. I see very much that we still have that opportunity in CAM, and I suspect we will continue to leverage all of those great minds that we've got here in the UK.
I think that definitely agree with that. We're in this pre-commercial phase where resolving these matters of the engineering standards, resolving the business case, building supply chains are key enablers for commercialization. So the many benefit from the work we're doing in the UK today. So I guess do you see that also in terms of the type of engagement that we have both within the UK but also with international organisations as well?
Yes, I do, and I think one of the things that's really important when we think about how that engagement works, probably more on an international level, is what is the UK known for? What will people come and look at us for? We can sort of think about, if you want to think about robo taxis, you want to think about kind of those kind of things. You look to the US, right? So you've got the likes of Waymo and Cruise and various others who have been forging ahead there, and it's really clear that if you want to see what the latest is happening in that space, that's where you look. If you're really interested in sort of the big infrastructure projects, you're probably looking, across to China and lots of regions in Asia which are forging ahead there. The question is, what is the UK's CAM identity? And that's one of the things that we highlighted in our most recent roadmap report, was that, in fact, we did an international comparison piece of work looking at the CAM landscape globally. And that was one of the questions that arose. What do we want to be known for? And I think that's still a bit of an open question. We can try and be everything to everyone. But then, do we run the risk of not having that depth of expertise? And so, maybe this is a call to arms for those coming to the show in a couple of weeks. What do you think the UK's identity is or should be? Do we want to say, well, we're going to be all about buses, and that we're going to take a use case approach? Do we want to be known as the people who build the world's most robust safety cases? Now, we probably need all of those things, and it's really difficult to nail down an identity. But when we want to think about those international engagements, what are people coming to us for? What do they want to talk to us about? What do we want to be known for? And I think if we can focus down to that and say, look, this is collectively, and that's across government and industry and academia, what do we want to be known for? What do we want to really major in? And then that will then draw those conversations together, off the back of which a myriad of spillover benefits and opportunities can fall out.
So, Mark, we have a new government now, and so I'm very interested in the kind of your thoughts about the elevator pitch, as it were, to say why CAM is an opportunity in the UK. So, if the minister were here now on this call, what would you highlight as the sort of opportunity areas, and what the benefits to society would be from the wider adoption of CAM in the UK and beyond?
Yeah, great question. And yes, the elevator pitch, always, we're never quite as well prepared for these as it definitely should be by now. I think when we look at the opportunity for CAM, I think it's really clear that there are two benefits that we should really focus ourselves on. The first is safety. We have an immensely safe transport network in the UK. Let's be really clear about that. But our levels of safety have plateaued over many years. It is really difficult to save those last number of lives which are impacted every year on the transport network. So by getting a more consistent level of driving, a safer level of vehicles on the road, that's a huge opportunity societally for CAM. And so we put that almost as a hygiene factor. It's a foundational element. If we can take a step forward in safety, that would be absolutely game changing for many families around the UK. The other area is to say, well, actually, the movement of people and goods around the UK is often coined as a friction cost on the economy. No one wants to pay to move the things around, but you've got to do it. You've got to get people places for work and for all sorts of activities, to spend money to generate economic movement. If we can make that more efficient, we can raise productivity of UK industry. If we can move goods around more effectively, if we can do that more efficiently, with lower costs, with greater reliability, what you are doing is improving the productivity of UK industry, whether that's manufacturing or software, digital services, whatever it is. If you can move your people and the goods and the things that you need to much more effectively and much more reliably, you can boost the productivity of the UK economy. And the SMMT report, the economic opportunity, outlines all of the opportunities for that. And actually 66 billion by 2035 is a huge number, which could be realised just by raising that bar of productivity in the UK, by ensuring that the friction cost of transport is reduced as much as possible.
So we can see business-to-business benefits here. We can see safer public transport. The question then, I guess, is really relates to how do we sell those benefits to the wider community as the user experience. So I know that work is going on in this area, and I'm interested in particularly areas that you think are, or projects or initiatives, maybe Pave UK and others, that are helping address that, so that there's a user acceptance, and because it is quite a radical thing to not have a steering wheel.
Absolutely, and I think the third part of a pitch which I didn't lead on is a reality that people's expectations of what they want out of their journeys is changing. I've got two young kids, and if you can't do it through a phone or have instant access and technology at your fingertips, they're not interested. And I think increasing levels of technology in our transport network is coming, and we need to harness it in the right way. To do that, you are absolutely right that we need to engage with the users of that network. So if we think about passenger transport, we need to engage with those users to say, well, how can this technology help your journeys? How can it make your commute to work, or your trip to the shops, or your visit to see your elderly mother? How can we make that more beneficial to you? And by understanding that and putting the technology in to solve that problem, is the only way that we're going to get that acceptance, that engagement from from users of the technology. So consequently, a number of the passenger-focused deployment projects that we support, that the CCAF funded, as I mentioned earlier, those projects are engaging with their users to showcase and provide them access to understanding what this is all about. Because if I talk to, when I meet people and I tell them what I do, I get one of two reactions. People are either really excited and the people who love technology and they want to do that, and the other people who sort of suck the air in between their teeth, raise their eyebrows, who are skeptical, and I totally understand both of those responses. What we have found, and what the Great British Exploration, which was a project that CCAV ran last year, that engaged a big number of people in experiencing this, is that once people have experienced self-driving technologies, a lot of the fear and the uncertainty and the unknown goes away, and you see a marked rise in people's interest and acceptance of this as a technology. So these deployment projects which are out there, which will put in real services into real vehicles into real service, will allow more and more of the public to engage with it. And I think that's a really useful way of doing it. We also have the great work of Pave UK, which is looking at how do we provide the education, how do we provide the information and the engagement with the public in this area, which I think is really useful as well. We need to educate people. We need to tell them what the technology can do, what it can't do, how it works. We need to provide an experience that people can get on board and see it, touch it, feel it. How does it make me feel to, as you say, to have no steering wheel or to see no one in a driver's seat? And then all of that will lead to a rise in engagement. And at that point, once we've got to the third E, the engagement level, I think then we can start to see that there will be a demand which rises for these services. But we can't expect a demand if we don't educate, we don't provide experience, we don't allow people to engage.
So Mark, really excited and looking forward to your presentation at Cenex Expo. Also that from Millie on the infrastructure side. But you've also got Teodora Demirova presenting. So I'm interested to hear what she'll be presenting on.
Yeah. So Taya will be there. Yep, on the 5th of September on day 2. What she'll be doing is presenting alongside sort of a panel of industry, is launching this next CAM supply chain survey that we're doing. So it's talking a little bit there about what we've pulled out from previous iterations of the survey, and understanding of what is the CAM supply chain, who are the people, what are they doing, where's the opportunities, where are the gaps, and having a bit of a conversation with the panel there about what is the opportunity going forwards, and a call to arms for people to help provide us with information about what they're doing in this sector, so that we can have a really good comprehensive view, which ultimately allows us to speak with authority, to government, and to be part of the groundswell of voices which says we need continued commitment from government into this space, whether that's legislation or funding or policy or whatever it might need to be. So yeah, that session will be really interesting. Anyone who wants to understand a bit more of the nuts and bolts of what the CAM supply chain really looks like.
Mark, this is so exciting. I'm really looking forward to Cenex Expo event, to the CAM seminar content within it, with the CAM exhibition. So thank you very much for sharing this pre-event conversation with me, and I look forward to meeting you and all of the colleagues at Zenzic at the event.
Brilliant. Can't wait for it. We'll see you there.